I think regardless of the justifiable public outcry over the handling of the new National Maternity Hospital and the prospective ownership of that facility being given to a religious order, I think regardless of that, this motion was incredibly timely. And there's no doubt about it, our maternity services are in desperate need of reform, and it is something that we need to discuss. And I think the government's response to sort of come up with the best she can do is to say, well, sure, look, we compare favourably with other countries. Do we? Which ones? Not any ones I'd like to be compared with, to be honest with you, because let's look at some of the facts. Between 2011 and 2013, there were 27 maternal deaths. Otherwise, healthy women who went in and lost their lives in childbirth or shortly afterwards. There were inquests in only 3 of those cases. In 2014, there were 365 reported cases of severe maternal morbidity. But we'd have to say our data is incomplete because not all of the maternity hospitals participated in that. And between 2007 and 2015, the HSE incurred a staggering £66 million in legal fees arising from maternity cases involving serious injury or death to women or babies. And between those same years, the HSE, through the State Claims Agency, paid out an even more staggering £282 million in damages in maternity cases. In other words, 116 times more was paid out in legal settlements and fees than the extra £3 million that you're given to the new National Maternity Strategy. And unless that culture of litigation and denial, of lack of accountability, of lack of oversight is dealt with, our problems will continue. Now, there's no doubt about it that one of the key reasons for our problems is the significant understaffing levels in terms of midwives and doctors across the state. Meanwhile, of course, reports and reviews into adverse incidents are either not made available publicly or they're badly delayed. The review of adverse incidents in Portiuncula Hospital, for example, was meant to be available by mid-2015. We still don't have it. But we did discover, of course, last week that the hospital was carrying out a secretive review of care, with the doctor even ignoring advice and sort of saying, well, he didn't even see the reason why there should be any review at all. And I think we have to deal with these issues because our maternity services are consistently running at suboptimal levels, which is undoubtedly leading to trauma for women and their families and to catastrophic outcomes. Because of that lack of accountability, because of the completely inadequate and non-binding HSE open disclosure policy. What we need is a statutory duty of candour in order to deal with these cases, and it is more than urgent. And that's one of the reasons why I moved the Coroner's Bill back in 2015 and why that is so critically needed, and yet we still don't know whether the government has passed a money message, even though the Justice Committee agreed more than 6 months ago that it would go to committee stage next week, because we need accountability and openness if our services are going to improve. And the widowers who lost their wives and the mothers of their children can testify to the failures of our maternity services and the need to change. We know from the 8 inquests held between 2007 and 2015 into the deaths of women in our maternity services that vital information was withheld. They were often not privy to internal investigations and reports until the HSE was ordered to produce them in public hearings by the coroner's offices. And we know, of course, that although hospitals and the HSE indicated that they would change procedures after some of those and protocols, those weren't implemented and carried through. And that's just utterly devastating for those families. I mean, it's not an exaggeration to say that if the HSE recommendations issued on foot of the tragic death and the inquest into the death of Tanya McCabe had been made enforceable national policy, then Savita Halappanavar may not have died. We know that if the inquest into Dara Kivlahan's death hadn't been delayed for 4 years, she died in 2010, the inquest was in 2014, then Sally Rowlett, who died in 2013 in the same hospital of the same condition, leaving 4 children, may not have died. These are very, very urgent issues that need to be addressed. It shows systemic failures and a lack of openness in our system. We know that there are countries across the EU which have much better health outcomes than we have, so we need proper audit and genuine open disclosure. We have to have automatic inquests into maternal deaths in order for maternity services to improve. I think it's unforgivable that, say, in this day and age, we don't have fetal abnormality scans are not available as a matter of course to women. I know you've told us over and over again, Minister, that all hospital groups offer such scans, but the reality is the scans have to be implemented by doctors. Women outside of major centres have to travel, and the consequence, of course, is that abnormalities are not always picked up, and it's just not good enough. I really welcome the motion, but I do think it doesn't go far enough, and that's not a point of criticism, it's just an observation, because the National Maternity Strategy, it's far from flawless, to be honest with you. The language in it is quite feeble. We talk about woman-led care, and there's been a deliberate decision not to have midwifery-led care because seemingly there's some random or mythical, highly polarised debate out there about midwifery care. I reject that. I'd say it's far more likely that actually expensive and private obstetric practices are the ones who are controversial and worried about midwives. Nobody else is. And midwifery-led care is the way forward. We know, for example, in Scotland, they've 18 freestanding or alongside midwifery-led units serving a population roughly the same as Ireland. Yet we have 2 pilot schemes in Cavan and Drogheda. There hasn't been a single sod turned to provide even one midwifery-led unit in Ireland, despite the National Maternity Strategy making promises on that over 14 months ago. The Scottish National Maternity Strategy provides that every woman will have continuity of care from a primary midwife who will provide the majority of their antenatal, intrapartum and postnatal care. The input of an obstetrician is in addition to that. It's centred around the midwife, which is the best for the state, for the health outcomes for women, and even also for the public purse. And we have to say, like, our National Maternity Strategy is non-statutory. That's a huge problem with that. Like, it's only the third national document that we've had on our national maternity services since the early 1950s. But because it's non-statutory, it's not binding. We can put out a vision for change. Yeah, we all know about that. It's a lovely vision, but it's not really tallying with reality. So I think we need to address this. You're getting a month to look at the National Maternity Hospital. We'll see what happens. But, let's not forget, St Vincent's was built in the first place with public money. I mean, isn't it ironic that all the way back in 1972, Noel Brown was questioning the funnelling of public money and cash into a hospital to the Sisters of Mercy, and here we are now 45 years later, and it's a matter for debate. There is no debate. This has to be sorted out. It's a public hospital with public money, and it should be publicly owned.
Thank you very much. Our next group now is